Hey everybody, I am actually getting ready to shoot some video on this tank. I just fed it, and my recovering skinny loach that is actually looking much better is in there munching away at some snails. I threw a variety of different food in there. It went up to the surface when I was feeding the rest of the fish the flake food. It ate some of the flake food, but not a whole lot. So I threw some sinking cichlid pellets in there, and it ate one or two of them, but it just didn't really seem like that was cutting it for it. It kept swimming around doing its foraging thing, sort of rooting around in little nooks and crannies like they do. And so I decided tonight would be a good night to throw a handful of small snails in there, and immediately went after them and started picking them up. I threw maybe 10 of them in, something like that, maybe a dozen. And the biggest one was probably about the size of the loach's eyeball, which is a good recommended size if you're feeding snails to your loaches. I've said probably long ago that loaches are snail destroyers or something to that effect, and over time I've come to realize they're not. They do like snails, they do eat snails, and you won't have snails in a tank that has loaches in it. But that's not to say that if you've got a tank that's filled with snails and a huge snail explosion problem, just putting a loach in there isn't going to vanish all of your snails overnight. They don't go through them like that. That one apparently got a little bit of a shell stuck in there somewhere. But over time, they will eventually deplete the snails in the tank. I throw snails in this tank all the time, and yet you never see snails in this tank, and it's because the loaches keep on top of them. And so tonight I threw maybe 10 to a dozen, as I said, in there, and that's enough. I don't need to throw a huge amount in. I just need to throw enough in there that this loach in particular, who I want to start putting on some weight, would get a good nourishing meal. And of course I feed my snails a variety of different foods as well. You know, you are what you eat, and that applies to my snails too. If I want my snails to be good nutritious food for my fish, I need to feed my snails well. And so the snails get all of the same foods my fish do. They get the flake food, they get the sinking granules, they get shrimp pellets occasionally, they'll get freeze-dried krill occasionally, and of course I always throw some of the high-calorie algae wafers in there because those things are just good stuff for everybody. And so my snails are basically made of all the same stuff that my fish food is, and by having this loach munching away on that, I know it's getting a good, well-balanced meal. Now, I've had people raise the possibility of parasites within the snails, and I suppose that is a possibility. Oh, we can see him eating some of the well, he spit it back out, but that's some of the cichlid pellets that it's munching on now, so I hope it eats some of those too. I suppose it is a possibility. I don't know where I got my original batch of snails, probably just out of one of my tanks, probably came home, from the pet store on some plants or something. Way back in the day, I used to go out to the stream across the street, and I used to collect snails to feed to Butterbean. And eventually I got a little nervous about doing that. I didn't want to keep bringing wild snails in to feed him. And so eventually I decided to breed my own. And I don't know if my original stock came from the stream across the street, or if I took it out of one of my tanks that had come off of one of the plants I'd brought home from the fish store. No idea. But it has been years and years and years that I've been breeding my own snails in that little snail tank down there. And if there are parasites in there, they are, they're multi-generational historical parasites at this point that have been going on and on and on for a great number of generations of snails for many, many years. So I tend to think there's probably not parasites in the snails that I feed my fish. Again, I tend to feed my snails pretty good, high-quality food, and I don't bring in any outside snails other than whatever I originally started with. Probably, I don't know, I've probably been breeding them 5 or 6 years now. So anyway, this was supposed to just be a good look at my formerly skinny loach. I am going to talk more about it. I don't want to jump the gun too much. It is recovering. It does definitely look better but I don't think I'm out of the woods yet, and I'm still not exactly sure what was going on. And that's what I want to talk about, not so much the fact that it's starting to look better, but I want to talk about the whole process of what was going on, how I treated it, what I treated it for, why I treated it, and how I eventually wound up hopefully curing it, because it sure looks a whole lot better to me. And I would imagine it probably does to you too, at least any of my regular viewers that are used to seeing how skinny that thing was. I mean, it was on death's door, it was emaciated, and now it is looking much, much better. So there you go. Stay tuned. Make sure you are subscribed. You don't want to miss anything I got coming up. The video of this tank is probably going to come out tomorrow because it's already getting kind of late, and I want to let the tank settle down a little more before I actually shoot the second half of that video. So look forward to that tomorrow. And as I said, make sure you're subscribed. You won't miss that or anything else. You never know what it's going to be. And don't forget, of course, this one is my 125-gallon tank. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you real soon on the next one.